the championship business team from Mr. McConnell's class who are here tonight to present their view and their version of Shark Tank and tell us about the products that they're marketing in their project in class. So Mr. McConnell, why don't you introduce your sharks?
Okay. How is everybody doing tonight? Thank you guys for coming. This is my 4th grade class. We're going to be presenting our Shark Tank project, which we did in December. Today, we have asked the children to come, and we put a little twist on it, where we've taken children from our class to actually become the sharks. In years past, we've had our esteemed faculty, Ms. Connolly, Mr. Murray, Ms. Montgomery come in and be sharks. But today, you guys are going to see the children asking the question and posing offers. The children had the task to come up with a solution to a problem that they see every day and to create a business out of it and create a business plan where we are tying in writing, math, social emotional learning, and public speaking. So without further ado, I'm going to let the kids share with you. First, I'm going to introduce my sharks. They're going to tell you why they are sharks, and then we will have our guests speak. All right, Mr. Moss.
Hello, my name is Getty Moss. I invented the portable Ninja Warrior, and I directed that towards the sports market, and I've made millions of dollars off of my and then I made a website.
Lucas.
My name is Lucas Morita, and I invented a measuring knife which helps you, what's it called? Measure and not undercook or overcook your food while trying to cook it. My name is Sofiana Arroyo, and I invented the stomper rug. Basically, you stepped on a letter on the rug, and it said the letter.
Interactive.
Hi, my name is Logan, and I created the desk insert, and it's right behind Getty. And you can basically organize all your paperwork and books in your desk.
Even the Chromebooks.
Anybody wants to purchase that, they are for sale. All right, sharks, please take your spot facing the audience. Okay, now we are going to have our presenters come up as they do on the show. We have our sharks who are listening to offers trying to make a business proposal and make some money. First we have, come on up. You don't have to stand behind it, you can stand in front. Ready, go.
Hello, sharks. My name is Jada Lamonte, and I am here to tell you about my amazing product, 2Sips. Have you ever woke up saying to yourself, oh, I really want coffee, but I also want water, or 2 drinks at the same time? Well, my product can help you with that, and I will tell you how. My product has two sides. One side is insulated and hot, and the other side is insulated and cold, so you could drink coffee and water at the same time, or any hot or cold beverage. So you could drink this anytime, anywhere, and it is one less thing to carry in the morning if you're late or having one hectic morning. You can depend on my cup. And I am marketing both kids and adults. I would like to sell this product for people that always want two things to drink, like for example, orange juice and coffee in the morning all the time. Well, my product can help you with that. My product can change your future morning. I'm asking for $10,000 for my startup, which will entitle you to a 10% equity in my company. My price per unit is $20, with my expenses being $15 per unit. I plan to sell them at Walmart, which has 6,663 locations across the USA. I will pay my employees $20 an hour, so I will have to have 20 employees. Selling 1,000 cups at $20 each will earn me a profit of $15,000. I did some research, and the text says an average cost of a dollar bottle is $4.98 a day for about $10 each. You can purchase a 60-ounce or 32-ounce, saving you hundreds of thousands of dollars. So stop buying single-serve water bottles just to refill it again, to satisfy your everyday hydration needs. I would sell my product on social media by creating a video commercial and posting it on the internet. You can also check out my fantastic cup at 2sips.com. Now, who is ready to drink 2 sips at once? I know I am. Are you?
At this point, we are now going to to open up the floor to our sharks, who have been listening intently and are willing to make offers and/or recommendations. So, sharks, any comments?
Wow. Wow, 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 wow. That was incredible. I could use this every morning of my life, honestly. I'm sure you could too. I'm sure it could. I'm sure it is. I'm sure everybody could.
I really like the idea of drinking hot chocolate and water at the exact same time. Maybe you can put more alcohol in there. Hot chocolate.
Yeah. Would they melt too fast is the real question.
Yeah. So how big is one of the slots?
One of the slots is like 8 ounces.
So for the 16-ounce cup, it would be 8 ounces?
No, the 16 ounce was in the research that I found.
No, the 16-ounce. Oh, so it's
Yes.
sell.
Yeah, altogether this is a 16 ounce, but when you cut it in half, it's 8 and 8.
Okay.
Yeah.
In the 32 ounce, it would be 60.
Yeah.
How much money are you asking for?
$10,000.
How much equity are you willing to give away?
10%.
$10,000.
I have a question.
Barely even one.
Yeah. So, if you would make one change to this to make it a better product, what do you think you would change in your program?
Well, right now, my logo is paper, so maybe I would like indent it into the cup so it wouldn't.
Printed
So like, yeah, so if you would wash it, it would still be there.
Sharks, do you have any offers?
I have an offer to make. Since I can get this to the sports market, I can get this in Nike, Under Armour, Adidas, everywhere you can think. So I'll give you $150,000 for 20% equity in your company.
We're going to counteroffer?
No, I think we'll team up.
Sorry, Sophia, what are you bringing to the table if you plan to partner up?
Maybe give it to teachers who need it.
Mr. Bragg.
Gianna, are you willing to take the offer?
I need to think about it.
All right, we will get back to it. All right, thank you very much, Gianna. Quick.
Hello, Sharks. My name is Abigail Mullenhoff, and today I am seeking $100,000, and I'm willing to give up 15% equity of my company. Do you ever wake up with naughty hair and in a rush for school or work? Well, I myself always wake up with naughty hair and always in a rush. Presenting the One Step Wonder Brush. My brush is the best brush you can buy because my brush has a detangling spray bottle on the back of the brush. So, all you have to do is take it out and then you can squirt it in your hair and then brush. Don't fuss about running out of spray because you can buy more and you don't have to buy another brush. I make my own detangling spray that is organic and very helpful. Studies show that organic detangling spray is much better than chemicals. So if you care for your hair and want it to stay healthy, then you should use mine. I have all different kinds of smells for my detangling spray, like coconut lime, lavender, vanilla, and ocean breeze. So if you like lavender, you can get it and enjoy it. I will sell my product at CVS. Studies show that there are 9,000 CVS's in the USA. I will hire 50 workers. Each worker will get paid $15 an hour. It is $11 to make my brush. Each worker will make 100 brushes an hour. I would be making $125,000 an hour. Don't forget to check out my brand new website, onestepwonder.com. I think that if you care about your hair and need a better brush, then buy mine. So, Sharks, who is ready to be a part of a wonder of a brush?
Sharks. Sophia.
How much money do you want, and how much equity for it?
I want $100,000 and I'm willing to give about 15% equity.
Lucas.
What's your profit?
My profit is $125,000 an hour.
Logan?
Do you make different brushes?
I could look into that and
Improvise.
Getty?
Is there any chance you could give us a demonstration, possibly?
Yes.
I have to. And voila.
Look at that.
Any other questions?
So would you make like a special thing for like a holiday special or summer special, Christmas special, Easter special?
I could look into that. Lucas?
What if the people who bought it didn't really like any of the smells? Will you make more, or will you
Yes,
just stop?
I'm planning to make more smells.
Okay.
Based on your prototype, is there anything you would change?
Yes, I want to make this metal part plastic and fold down so that when traveling, it's easy.
All right, thank you. And our final presenter,
Hello, sharks. My name is Sophia Bravo. All ladies know we get ready for a special occasion, like a wedding, at the beach. And we wear our favorite dress, but then it starts raining. It's so annoying. I've created a website that has what my dresses do and who my dresses are for. I am the president of Stay Dry Dresses by Sophia Bravo. My idea is to offer my collection of beautiful dresses to women and girls of all ages. According to the Met Office climate data, over the 30-year period, there is 106.5 days of rainfall per year on average. I'm seeking $100K for 10% equity in my company. The cost of materials for one dress is $40. Plus, I will be paying my grandmother $10 for each dress she makes for me. The cost for 100 dresses will be $4,000. My revenue will be $7,000 and my profit will be $3,000. So sharks, who wants to help me help girls look fabulous all the time? Lucas?
Fine.
Will you hire workers instead of just your grandma?
My plan is to hire 50 workers
Okay. Where do you intend to sell your product?
at Target.
Only Target?
Maybe other stores in the future. Logan?
How long did it take you to make that? Or your grandma?
Took about like a day to make one.
Well,
Savannah?
well, maybe you could, if once your workers get used to it, well, it'll probably take faster. Maybe you should get some sewing machines.
Yes.
Yeah.
Rather than hand.
does your dress actually work?
Yes.
Oh,
Can we spray?
Prove it.
Prove it. Okay, cheers, and you always have a backup plan.
Yeah, step up away from the water.
No accidents. Right off.
it just
Right
literally
off.
slides off. There's only a
The only water's on the shore.
Any other questions? Sharks?
How much equity are you willing to give up, and how much money do you want?
I want $100K for 10%.
Sharks, do we have an offer?
No.
Well, not quite making an offer, but I just don't mean to put you on the spot, but this just really isn't my area of specialty. So, I'm sorry in advance. Yes, unless they were tuxedos.
I have not. I'm willing to give you 100K. That's for 20%.
20%.
Logan?
I'll give you 150K for 20%.
Ooh.
That's insane.
No, you said 100.
Sophia, where did you want to get your merchandise into? What was your plan? Where were you trying to sell?
At Target.
Can anybody help her with that? Sophia, you think you can?
Well, teachers like wear woman teachers. Wear dresses to school. Well, since I have access to the education, why don't I could sell them to teachers? Woman. Female teachers.
Female.
Female.
So any final offers? Lucas, final offer?
200 for 25% equity.
$200.
200K.
Good.
200K.
Sophia, what do you plan to do with the money that you're asking the Shark store?
I plan on using it for more material.
And then maybe hire women.
Yes, hire more workers.
Could always
Get grandma a break, right?
Yeah.
All right, whose offer would you like to take?
Sophia.
Congratulations. So basically, this is done over about a month's period where we are working in everything, like I said, from math to writing to public speaking. And the children have to do the research on their own, which is a huge part of the fourth grade. These kids really have done a fantastic job, and they may seem like this has been rehearsed and practiced. We did this in December. So whatever the kids have done, they did it all on their own, and they did it this week. So congratulations to the kids.
That was amazing. You guys, that was great. Absolutely great. Great job. Great job.
You want to say something?
Great job. All three of you.
Just stay after we want to.
I want to thank the students for a brilliant presentation. And before I hand it over to somebody else, the cup, the two-sided cup, if you market that to sports fans, those cold winter football games, you can serve Irish coffee at it. So, again, thank you.
I just wanted to congratulate the teacher and the kids on the road. Before you go, listen. I designed you to stay because we need to send a budget to the community tonight. And we could certainly use your help because obviously you have expertise. But thank you for coming. It was absolutely terrific to see the work you put into this project. Thank you.
Thank you.
Good job.
Thank you so much. And our students probably have to go home and do homework, so we want to, if the parents want to take them, we're happy to let you go. Thank you again. Great job.
Okay, Mr. DeVito, presentation of the budget.
Tough act to follow that. Okay. So we get to talk about highlights on the budget, and tonight is adoption. So this is the last chance for the board to consider the different proposals that are before the board. And for the budget, they're going to come up with a final total, and they're going to set a tax levy. So I just want to outline how we've come to tonight. We started talking about the budget back in the board presentation December 14th. And you can see here, and these are all on the website, under Finance and Operations, you see we've had 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 presentations before tonight. Tonight's our 8th presentation, and we've covered a variety of topics. We started off by talking about preliminary salaries and benefits. And just as again, just to touch on a highlight, we start with taking a look at what our program is going to be, our current program for next year. We look at our contracts, we look at health insurance costs, the premium costs, our retirement benefits, workers' comp, all of our benefits, salaries on the present program, and we say, well, what's it going to be at next year's costs? And we come up with the net projection of what that is. When we take a look at salaries, we look at which staff members are going to move along the schedule, what do the collective bargaining agreement provide, and what kind of additional rates are going to increase or what's going to stay the same. Health benefits, you'll see here that we have offer health insurance to employees and retirees, and we have to take a look and see what kind of premium rates are going up, and then we have to project for the following year where we don't have rates. This is an example of one slide that has to do with health insurance costs, and you can see just this one element of the budget is going up by about $1.3 million, which is significant, and that's a big, big chunk of money to go up in just 1 year. This shows you the trend of what's been happening with health insurance, and why I'm focusing on health insurance is because that's a cost that continues to go up, and we have very little control over it, right? It doesn't have to do with whether we're going to have more program or less program. If we have a certain number of staff members and we're offering health insurance, which is something that we do for full-time staff, then you see here it's a fixed cost. You take a look at what's happening here, and this trend is important. You see, even though it's gone up, if you go back about 5 years, it went up very small increments. But in the past couple of years, it's skyrocketed. And this graph really shows you the trend over the past 10 or so years. In retirement system, we have 2 different retirement systems, and it depends on which retirement system in terms of what the premium is. And you see here's a little bit of a different 10-year pattern. Right? It went up many years ago, and then it went down because it was tied to the market a bit. And our pension contribution for TRS, that's the teacher's retirement system, our contribution amount actually went down, and now it's trending back up again. It's supposed to continue to go up, and that's something we have to be mindful for in the future. So this was a net position increase back in December, just with the current program. You see we had to increase $3.4 million just for staff salaries, health insurance, pension, and some of the payroll taxes that correspond to those types of costs. The only 2 areas of these fixed costs that went down very, very slightly was the employee retirement system contribution and our workers' compensation premium. The week after that, we talked about facilities. This is a description of what's considered part of facilities, which departments and what functions that it includes. And it's mostly operations and maintenance, which is our custodians, the cleaners, security, and our mechanics and groundskeepers and their supervisors. This slide highlights some of the changes in that function and in that department. You see here a decrease, right? So we're trying to bring the budget down, mostly because we're right-sizing the amount for our utilities, for our oil and gas. We had money in the budget prior to account for different kinds of rate increases, and rates haven't increased so much so that we can bring that down and save about 2% in the overall budget, based on aligning the budget with expenditures. This shows some staff salaries. There were some changes that we're proposing to the board for next year. Basically, we have one supervisor that's retiring, and we're going to think about that in a little bit of a different way. We are replacing that person, but it's a shift in terms of codes. And what happens sometimes is that you shift expenses from one code to another, and it's just a better way to account for it depending on how you're going to categorize those expenses. You see here in some of the other codes, we did some changes in terms of money a guard that was covered by a grant or not covered by a grant. There are times expenditures are covered by a grant versus the general fund, and we have to make sure those are in the right codes. The week after that, we focused on transportation, and you can see here transportation covers a variety of different functions, okay? And the functions here are our in-house drivers, our drivers and our bus aides. And you see here in this code, we also have equipment that we have to get for buses, such as cameras, and then if there's any bus repair, we'll engage an outside vendor. And those are broken out into different areas. When we talk about the objects, it's the second 3 digits. The function is the first 4, the object is the second 3 after the period, and it's in the 1s for salaries, in the 2s for equipment, in the 4s when we're dealing with a vendor, and 5 when we're dealing with supplies. Also in transportation, we have the garage building, so those are where our mechanics are, and these are the types of expenses that we'll post and that we have in the budget for the garage. Contract transportation, we have a lot of our routes that are done by outside contractors, and there's a special function for that, that's 5540, and then we can offer public transportation as an option for some of our students, and that is something that's feasible, and then we do some transportation through BOCES, separate function. So the main point in this slide has to do with the fact that we're going out to bid next month to try to reduce some of our costs for transportation through our vendors. So we think we can get better pricing if we go out to bid, and we're going to bid out all of our work, see what comes back, because we have a sense that we'll be able to, with going out to bid with that competition again, bring some of our rates down. You see there's a slight decrease in district transportation. That has to do more with code alignment. We are still keeping our same complement of drivers, which we have 56 drivers, we have 51 in-house routes, and the 5 are spares that we have all the time. It's like kind of like a permanent sub that we have over in transportation. No change there. So whatever we end up doing with contract transportation in terms of bringing our routes down, we're not doing anything in terms of changing the number of drivers. It may just be a shifting of some of the work over there in transportation. In terms of staff salaries, this is just an example of some line item codes, and I'm not going to go through the notes. Again, this is just as a matter of review, going through some of the highlight slides that we covered when we did this presentation a couple months ago. General education, all right, what's important here is you see this is our biggest function, A2110, so as you're looking through the budget and you're going through the line by line, you're going through the function summaries, A2110 encompasses all of general education, whether it's salaries, when we'll have it with the 1 after the period, or equipment, where we'll have it after a 2 after the period, or maybe dues and fees, then it'll be a 4 because it has to do with a vendor service, or a 0.5, it has to do with supplies. And these, again, are examples of things that are in the budget that help keep our general education program moving forward. This talks a little bit about our What I'd like to highlight here is that all of our elementary schools provide Spanish language. It used to be called FLES, but it's something that we still offer, and our talented and gifted program is remaining at Lido without any reduction in services. There was some discussion over the past couple of months, is it going to stay at Lido, is it going to go to Lindell? We've decided to keep it at Lido. Some programs here, again, I want to highlight that in the budget, we have $9,000 that we're increasing for pre-K techs so that we can develop early literacy classroom libraries. That's an addition to the pre-K program. $30,000 that we're increasing so that we can roll out a new science elementary curriculum for the 4th and 5th grade. That's new money, new program for the budget. And we're here an increase of $41.50 in our talented and gifted tests, so that this code is a very specific code here, so the funding level is consistent with recent expenditures. So as we go through the budget process, and it's about a 6-month process, we try to take a look at every single code to make sure that the funding is appropriate. Sometimes we're going to increase funding because we're adding a new program. Sometimes we actually decrease funding because the funding expenditures are not in alignment with the budget. And so you'll see a couple of different things happening when we go through the budget itself. This slide talks a little bit about our middle school program, and you see here some program increases, right? We're increasing the 0.4 teacher that used to be doing curriculum development for the middle years program, and we're putting that time back into the classroom. And they're going to be doing some more English and math classes with that extra 0.4. We're also reducing family and consumer sciences because of some of the interest there, and it's being shifted over to the high school. And we're increasing art because, again, more interest. So some ups and downs over in the middle school, but there's a net increase in middle school staffing. Some highlights for the high school program. We're increasing IB Visual Arts because of the interest there. We're increasing our business classes. As you can see here from tonight, we have some definitely budding business students that are going to take advantage of career finance, sports marketing, principles of marketing, entrepreneurship, and IB business. So we're increasing our teachers there by a 0.4. We're doing some different models in terms of math support and some math labs. And some decreases here based on a lack of interest over here. And this is a big, interesting new offering that we have, is an introduction to martial arts. So we're going to increase in 0.4 of FTEs in physical education at the high school because we're trying to bring in more kids for an interest in martial arts. This slide talks about what we just did, but it gives you the numbers. Again, this talks about elementary in terms of our ENL and how we have some different staff shifts. Middle school, I summarized it already. This translating, if you follow along with the notes, it takes you through how the actual numbers change. High school, same here. Talks to you about what's happening at the high school. Point 1 is salaries, and you'll see here that when we have a slide like this and we talk about salaries, a couple things are happening. There may be an increase in program. There may be staff moving along the salary schedule. It's a new schedule, and the function of maybe some staff that are retiring, lower cost replacements, it gives you a net effect, right? So sometimes it's hard to understand when you take a look at one line, what exactly is happening? You're looking at a summary slide, what's happening? And it's usually a bunch of these different factors. An example of some equipment that we have for teaching in terms of new cafeteria tables, money is in the budget for the middle school, money just in case we need to purchase a new bake oven. So what happens with equipment is it's a very specific code and you can't transfer money into equipment. So you need to have a little bit of money in some of these codes in case something happens. Over the past year, one of our ovens over at the high school, it broke, we needed to replace it, right? Unless you have money in an equipment code, you can't transfer money from a different code. So we try to think about what might happen, not be too conservative, but also have a little bit of money there. We're also going to replace some instruments, 4 basses and 2 cellos district-wide. Let's go to the next. And the next one. Let's talk about special education. So different function, A2250. What we have in the budget for next year is 1 new special education teacher at Long Beach Middle School because of the need that we have for another special ed class in the middle school. And we're also increasing a 0.6 FTE for what we're having as a new CPSC, CSE chairperson. And that's going to also be in the budget for the middle school. Excuse me, that's a district-wide. So what's happening in special ed, the big highlights here is new class over at the middle school, and we're increasing our FTE for our CPSC and CSE chairperson. Next, please. BOCES tuition is increasing.
Can you just repeat that?
Yeah.
I'm sorry, because we're all kind of, you said you're adding a CSC chair?
We're adding 0.4. So right now we have a CPSC chairperson as part-time position. I believe it's a, can you just go back to the other one? A 0.4. We're increasing 0.6. So we're going to have that person continue with the CPSC and also take over some of the burden that's at the CSE chair level. So we're adding a little extra assistance there for next year. $200,000 is based on a projected increase of 2 new students that we anticipate going to a BOCES special ed program. Only a slight increase here in the money that we have to spend for students going to out-of-district special education programs, and this is just because of an anticipated rate increase. So sometimes we need to put more money in the budget because we're expecting more students or because we're expecting the rate to increase. Here, tuition for New York State non-public schools, we expect that to actually go down by $200,000 because we anticipate 1 fewer student and a couple of other students that will switch to less expensive programs. Psychological service, another highlight that I have here is I want to make sure people are aware, in the budget for next year, we have 1 new full-time psychologist at our Nike work-based learning program and an additional 0.4 psychologist services at the middle school. Based on discussions that we had with our program staff, we feel that this is going to be very beneficial to our new program over at Nike. We're revamping the program there and giving it some more therapeutic support. And based on some of the needs that were expressed by our staff over at the middle school, they said they can use a little more psychological services there. So there's an increase of the 0.4 FTE. Social work, you see here, why is there an increase of about 7%? Is because we had Long Beach Reach as a contract that we have for social work services that was coded in there, just a general special ed code, and we felt that that was somehow not really the best way to code it. It really should be in the social work code because they're providing social work services, not really special education services. And again, as we go through the budget, we take a look and see where are expenses posted to make sure they're categorized in the proper way to increase transparency and greater understanding in our budget. Central administration, another budget presentation. We spent some time talking about the functions that are in our central administration office, like the business office. The function there is A1310, purchasing, human resources, and curriculum development with the corresponding functions. The key point here with our purchasing office, as you see here, there's a big variance. So what happens sometimes is we do some shifting of staff. So we had 2 clerical support over at facilities. We moved one of the clerical members over to support purchasing and to also share some of the burden on a district-wide basis. So if you took a look at facilities, in that clerical line, you would have seen that line go down because that staff member is now working over in the business office, filling a vacancy by somebody who had left last year. Human resources, basically you'll see code increase there because of staff salary increases, they're moving along this salary schedule, but we also increased the allocation. We had 1 staff member that was sharing some of her time with the district clerk and helping to support the superintendent's office, and HR really said, you know, we need that person full-time in HR, so it was a shifting from different codes, and that's why there's a little bit more of an increase there. Legal expenses. We needed to increase our legal code a little bit more than we had in the past years because we've been having more legal costs over the past several years. We don't anticipate that decreasing right away, so we needed to make sure we had enough in that code. Curriculum development, we're projecting an increase of about, you see there's a big increase of about $174,000. A couple of reasons why we're increasing on that. Mostly because we're going to be getting a new ENL coordinator that's going to be charged to this. We also had a math coach that was in a vendor services because we contracted out for that math coach. Now the math coach is actually an employee. So you see here sometimes there's a change where you have an employee that's being, that we get through a contractor that then we bring on as an employee, and that's why we have some changes there. And there's some more detail there in the notes. Keep going. Okay, co-curricular stipends. So these are codes, again, different function. Now we're in A2850. We're not in A2110, which is general education. We're not in A2250, which is special education, but we're in clubs, A2850. These other codes, after the object code, which has to do with salaries, this is location. So 21 is middle school, 22 is high school, and you see here that they are going up because the rates in the contract have gone up, as well as we're adding clubs. We're adding 3 new clubs at the high school, anime, chess, and mindfulness, and we're eliminating forensics. And that's why there's a little bit more going on here at the high school level, because we're adding some clubs. Interscholastic athletics, again, adding there because we're getting a new high school bowling program that we're very excited about, and that's the cost of about $10,000. We're adding a new middle school winter track coach. That's also in the budget, and this was partially self-funded, and you see here it explains how we partially self-funded those increases in our athletic program. Okay, I'm going to take a breath for a second. So that was basically a highlight and a quick review of our overall program. Now we have a series of codes. See, we're already up to A9901. So we've already gone from A, pretty much 1,000, all the way down to 9,000. Okay? And what we have here is something called interfund transfers. So this is a part of the budget where we put money in our general fund in order to transfer to some other funds. And it's kind of like a bookkeeping type of an exercise, but it's something that will allow us to do other work that is really sometimes accounted for in a different fund. For example, to the school lunch fund. So we put money in our general fund, which is what everybody gets to vote on and what the tax levy supports, in order to pay for a subsidy or to close the gap between what happens in our school lunch fund. So it's in a different fund where those transactions are really posted. And that's government fund accounting. So what we have here is an addition of $50,000. Why? Because the gap between the revenue we bring in from our food services program and our costs are about $400,000. We've been trying over the past several years to try to close that gap. Actually, the gap has been more than $400,000 for the past several years. So right now what we're trying to do is just right-size it. So we're trying to right-size the allocation, and it's in this code, A9901.930, so that it approximates to what we anticipate the gap being next year. What we anticipate the gap being for the current year is about $400,000, and we anticipate the same for about next for next year. Transfer to capital for facilities. All of our capital projects are transaction in the capital fund. Again, not the general fund, not the school food, the food services fund, but the capital. So again, it's a transfer, and let me take a minute to talk about what's happening here. Transfer to capital for facilities. This is a line that we can say, okay, we're gonna put some money in to do some capital work. What is it? We want to replace the first floor windows at West School, and we want to put a new storage building over at Nike. It's something that we've talked about for a couple of years now in terms of how are we going to use this money that we normally keep in this code? What can we do in the district? What are our priorities? What's important? And we know we need to replace those first floor windows at West because it's a security issue and it's also a ventilation issue. And we want to be able to accomplish both. And then we had a subcommittee with the board that looked at all of the needs that we had, and we said for this year, for 18-19, we're going to address this need over at West School. The next line item, unused prior transfer to capital facilities. So in the past years, like for example, if we didn't spend that full allocation of that transfer to capital, we didn't spend it fully, there were balance accumulated. And now's an opportunity to reallocate that money. For $600,000, we're going to reallocate that money to construct a new culinary arts classroom at the high school. We're actually going to create a brand new classroom at the very east end of the cafeteria. It's space that's not well utilized, and we're going to create a state-of-the-art program so that students can get a certification in this culinary arts program and not have to go to BOCES to do so. We hope that in time, when we generate some interest, we already have some interest, it'll pay for itself in terms of the money that we pay to BOCES for these students. And again, career readiness is very important to us, and it gives a pathway to another career. Transfer to capital reserve fund. Another line item, separate line items, all having to do with facilities. We are allocating $400,000 to put into a new capital reserve fund that we are going to be creating. That's going to be ballot proposition number 3 on the ballot in May, and it's to start funding new capital needs that we have, that some of them we anticipate, some of them we don't even anticipate at this point, but it's good fiscal planning to have a capital reserve fund that we can fund every year so that we don't have to do a bond for a small project and that we are able to maintain and keep pace with our aging buildings. So for this specific purpose, I'm recommending that we start building a balance. We're going to need about $4 million to build a new transportation building because in about 4 years' time, we are going to have to take a look at that building and think about building a new one. This just itemizes and explains everything that I just did to differentiate between everything that's happening with capital, having to do with the budget, having to do with the vote. And again, these items, these new doors and locks at East, middle school and the high school, new cafeteria wall with the transom at the high school, and a new security vestibule at Nike. 3 very important initiatives that's going to enhance our security district-wide, especially at the high school. We are going to ask the voters, it's going to be a proposition number 2 at the May vote, to please allow the district to spend the money that we already have. We already have this money in the capital reserve, but part of what's pursuant to law, we have to ask permission to do so. We have to ask the voters for permission to actually spend this money. How do we do so? It's a proposition on the ballot. The voters have to actually say yes on the ballot in order to spend this money. Again, money we already have, we're just asking for permission. I want to differentiate these 3 initiatives with the 2 that I just talked about that's in the budget for next year. Okay, it's in that line item for capital and that transfer to capital that we just talked about. And how does that happen? Is just by the board adopting the budget, which they're doing tonight, the fact that it's included in the budget, and then the public votes yes on the budget, then we're allowed to spend that money to replace the first floor windows at West and install a new storage unit at the high school. The new culinary arts classroom at the high school, that's the reallocation of the money that was left over from prior projects. That's, again, also in next year's budget. The only thing that has to happen, the board has to adopt tonight. They have to include that in the budget, which it is at this point. And when the public votes on it, then we get to move forward with that work. What I have here, and I have a couple of copies of this presentation in the podium over there, is an outline of every function total. So you see here the first is 1010, which is the Board of Education's budget, and it summarizes every function that all of the district expenditures are in, going from 2805 having to do with attendance, guidance, health services, some of the areas that I didn't focus on tonight, but it's all in there in that outline. Transportation, all of our pension systems, our health insurance, things I talked about at the beginning, for a total of a 3.4% increase. So what I'm asking the board for tonight is to please adopt a budget that allows us to increase from the current year of 3.4% and has all these wonderful programs that I just talked about, all of the contract costs that I said, in terms of staffing and what we're obligated to pay by keeping the program that we have this year, the health insurance, the benefits, and adding to what I highlighted tonight in terms of different programs, whether it's at the elementary school, at the middle school, the high school, whether it's general ed, special education, sports, or clubs. What I'm asking for, and this is what I asked for as of March 22, and what the board will have a chance to deliberate on this evening, is to what degree that I want to increase the tax levy. This number of a 3.47. We've had some things that have happened since March 22nd. We've got an adopted state budget. In that adopted state budget, they have given us more state foundation aid. So what we get to do, instead of what we thought that was going to, just go back for 1 second, where we were on March 22nd, we had a foundation aid increase of about $42,000, or a 0.18%. That was where we were in January. Now, they're giving us an additional 1.9%, or about $323,000 more. So I'm giving the board an option that if you'd like, reduce the tax levy by the amount of this increase in foundation aid, and let's go to option number 2. And version number 2 is we can bring that levy down to a 3.19%. All the other categories remain the same. State aid goes up, tax levy goes down. Or I'd like the board to consider version number 3, which has that increase of state aid, reduces the tax levy to a 2.98. And what we do is we appropriate some more fund balance. So there is something that we can do. We can take our fund balance, which is like our savings account, and we can say, community, we are going to give some of that back to offset the tax levy. So we're going to take some of the money in our savings account and we're going to appropriate it. We're going to allow that money to reduce the tax levy. So let me tell you a little bit about the cautions of that. Is we can afford to have about $350,000 to support ongoing expenses. That is something that we can do, and we can say for the next 10 years, we can afford about $350,000 to offset the tax levy and support our ongoing expenditures. To go much higher than that, then you risk having it where you're supporting your operating costs with your savings account. And that goes only so far, and then you deplete it, right? If you go back about 5 years, we have used about $10 million of our, what we call our savings account, over the past 6 years. Last year, we started to kind of right that, that trend, reverse that trend, and now we're kind of stabilized. So I'm saying that we can do this. We can do about $350,000 of our appropriated fund balance. We can get below 3% in our tax levy. We can use all of the state aid that the state says they're going to give us and still feel like we have what we've been trying to really have, what's called, and I haven't used it yet, but I'm going to use it now, a sustainable budget, okay? So this is a sustainable budget where we rely on state aid, we rely on other income. This other revenue is the income that we get for a variety of sources, most importantly, tuition from other districts that send their kids to our program, predominantly Island Park High School students, because a lot of that is Island Park High School. The LIPA pilot, right? We're expecting an additional $725,000 in the LIPA pilot, which was great, right? So it allowed us to rely less on our fund balance. And I think the $350,000 as appropriated fund balance is something that I feel comfortable recommending to the Board of Ed. And if we want to try to reduce the burden on the taxpayer, I would actually recommend version number 3. So that was about 20 minutes. Hopefully that was a good highlight.
Is it, when you listed the assistant supervisor for mechanics and grounds,
Yeah.
is that one position or 2?
That's one. So what happens is we have our assistant supervisor for custodial retiring. What we're recommending is that that position, that line, be filled in a little bit of a different way. We don't want to fill it exactly to have somebody to supervise custodians. We'd like all the head custodians to report directly to the director, but we'd like to bring on a new supervisor just to supervise the mechanics and the groundskeepers. So it would be assistant supervisor of maintenance as opposed to assistant supervisor of custodial. So it shifts from the operations line to the maintenance line. So the line is the same, it just shifts from one code to another.
Okay, and when you listed staff salaries, and then you broke it down to the other, like special ed salaries,
Yeah.
different areas, are those different areas included in the total staff salaries, or are they additional?
So it depends. So can you take me to that specific slide?
Well, the special ed.
Okay. So if you go, and I'm going to answer you as I go. So for the special ed, the general code for special ed is 2250. If you want to just take a look at the salaries for special ed, it's going to be 2250.1, and that's a summary, right? So for example, 2250 is the whole special ed code. It includes salaries, it includes equipment, it includes vendor services, and that's that. That's everything in special ed, 2250, that's going up by about 3.2%. I don't have a highlight slide for salaries. I just wanted to talk right about the tuition that we pay to BOCES. But that tuition for BOCES is included in here, okay? The money that we pay for out-of-district schools is included in that first summary, A2250, because it all flows from this A2250 function. I gave an example of what the whole code is. The whole code's going up by about 3.2%, all of our special education costs, and this is a line item, A2250.471, has to do with the amount of money that we pay for state schools that are private schools, where some of our special education students are educated. We have to pay tuition there. But this is included in the 2250. If this had been a .1, and that was salaries, again, that would have been included in the A2250. So I tried to give an example for the board to show the overall umbrella of the whole function, and then some examples. So if you wanted to take a look at a line item, I wanted to highlight things that were changing or just things that were of interest, something that was significant. And this is significant in the fact that we anticipate one fewer student and that some of the students are going to go to less expensive schools. That's significant to show that there is some movement in some of these codes.
Okay, thank you, Mrs.
You're welcome.
Brown.
Thank you, Mr. Divino, as usual, that was great. And thank you for having it be budget adoption night, so we don't have to do this again. Could you go to that last slide, the one that, version 3?
Sure.
So is our total budget $139,922,949? Is that right?
That's no proposal.
Okay. And if we were to have a 2.98
Tax levy.
increase, tax levy, that would amount to 102,034,891.
Correct.
Okay. So just so that those should be the numbers that should be in our agenda tonight.
If the board adopts this.
Right, but those aren't, so we need to recognize that, if we adopt that tonight, we need to change those
Yeah.
numbers. Okay, great. I just had 2 quick questions. Number 1, is the line-by-line budget, going online,
Yes.
going up on the district website? I had a call today from someone who was looking for it and said it was not up yet.
Well, the line by line as the 38-page line by line.
Okay.
But there's line by, yeah, I will put that up
The
tomorrow.
big line, the more,
The whole,
detailed
yeah.
line by line will go up tomorrow, okay?
but there are, each slide, as you know,
Of
has
course.
line by line.
Of course. Now, in between, assuming for a moment that we adopt this version 3 as the budget tonight, we've talked almost every week, you and I, about how this is a fluid document and things can change. So is it possible that with that while the bottom line stays the same, the 139, or the tax levy at 102, while they will not change after tonight, that there can be interior changes in the budget if necessary.
Yeah, so what happens is policy allows for budget transfers. So if they're within a certain amount, it's something that an administrator would request. It would come to my office, I would take a look at it, and they have to specify the reasons for the transfer. One thing they have to specify is what's the new need that wasn't established beforehand, like now, at budget time. They have to say if it's something that we didn't anticipate, I'd like to transfer money. They'd also have to say why they don't need the money in the code from which the money's coming from, because the board had already approved a certain level of funding for that code. So there's two things that there's line for a description to say why I don't need the money that was approved and why I need more than the money that was approved. And there could be two things happening. One is there could be an expenditure that came up that was under budget, which is great. You know, something they thought they were going to spend $1,000 on, it turns out that they only spent $700. And then there's a need that they thought would be able to be satisfied with $2,000, and it turns out they need $2,300, right? So that's the type of thing that we get where they make these requests. If it's something that's of a higher level, which the board has seen, then it has to come before you, and you have to approve it.
Well, I was thinking more like, just as a hypothetical, let's just suppose that this week we sell $400,000 worth of frozen yogurt. And we decide that we don't need a $50,000 increase in the subsidy that we make to the food service program. Would we be able to do something else with that $50,000 between now and definitely the date of the budget vote, but even after that? Okay, so if we find on this budget that hasn't been approved by the community yet, that we have too much and want something, or we need something somewhere else.
You wouldn't do a transfer until...
No, right, but we could make those changes prior to the budget adoption by the community.
That's an interesting question. So what you're asking is, you can say as a group, okay, we're going to approve a 3.4% increase to the budget. But you're going to say, you know, we have that $400,000 in food services. I really want to only transfer, let's say instead of $400,000, $390,000. I want to use $10,000 for another reason. Without a board meeting, and I'll also ask council, I would actually advise against it, because we are now representing something to the public through these presentations that we've had. And I gave a function summary that I went through very quickly, but I highlighted whether it was A1010 or A2110 or A2250, that this is what's in that code. Now, to make a change without having presented that to the public, and also we're going to have a budget newsletter that explains it, I would recommend against it.
Okay.
But next year, if it turns out that we don't need that funding, and there's, let's say, $10,000 that you would like to use for a different purpose, and we feel confident that we don't need it, then that is something that we have the ability to do.
Thank you again for your presentation, it was beautiful.
Thank you. Thank you. Appreciate it.
That's all right.
Thank you, Mr. DeVito, for your presentation. These numbers must have you absolutely exhausted. Not to mention that you got to take it on the road next week to all the PTAs, so thank you for your persistence and your professionalism. As you know, it's no surprise, I have issue with a number of things on the budget. I've been in communication with Dr. Gallagher and yourself. And specifically, those items are these. Publicly at Lindell a couple of meetings ago, I had issue with the appointment of a new psychologist for Nike, and I still do. I think the reach workers should be moved to Nike. I think that expenditure should be saved. It's news to me tonight that the CPSC chair is now a full-time position, and I would, had I known prior to this evening, I probably would have suggested, or I will suggest now, that one of the secondary people, maybe the middle school person, could have taken over that .4 position. I find it hard to believe. I don't know whether it's because there are more referrals or what there is, but once again, I think that there could have been some kind of interior or internal shift to accommodate that need if there was such a need. I do have issue with enrollment in middle school. family consumer science, or whatever we call it, consumer science enrollment down, and we're projecting a $600,000 culinary arts program at the high school. So that, to me, needs more clarity, because I can't quite justify that at the point.
Would
as
you,
well.
would it be okay if we pause there for a minute?
Yes, please.
So I hear that, and when I prepared it, also, there was a little bit of a cognitive dissonance
Yeah.
in taking a look at those two items.
Yeah.
I think what we're trying to do
I know.
is generate some more interest, because we know it's a really wonderful career path. We do have students that are enrolling in the BOCES program. We'd like to be able to have them educated at the high school. We'd like to reverse that trend, and we feel that by having an aspiring new space for students to be able to develop culinary arts certification at the high school, that maybe we'll see a change.
I heard you when you said that originally. I heard it again. I think it's a very solid rationale. But once again, I'm not so sure. One of my associations is, can that type of construction be done by our own people? No. So unlike the bathroom here or those kinds of things, we need contractors and change orders and all that kind of stuff.
Well, hopefully not. I mean, the past couple of projects that we've done with our new architect, we haven't had any change orders, so.
I'd like to see that I'd like to see that deferred, because I don't see an urgency. I would disagree with you in terms of if in fact interest in the middle school is down. I know that whole "if you build it, they will come" kind of attitude. I just had a question, because and I met with you in the fall, going over the closeout. I've met with you and your staff in your office, line by line. But I was concerned with the occupational ed and service being decreased by $150,000. And I wanted to know why that was.
Which function is that?
Occupational ed.
Yeah, can you just give me the number? I just want to pull that up.
I don't know the numbers as well as you do, but I'll find it for you. It just really struck me, because I know our children need it, and I was just thought it was a significant number. It really stuck out with me.
Is it the 2280?
2280, yes.
Yeah. So I'm gonna have to get back to you on that. It's not coming to me.
Because the other issue here for me is, and I think it sort of goes to Mrs. Verona's point, it's very hard to budget for special education when annual reviews are still going on.
Yeah.
And annual reviews are going to go on until June. So I think that's sort of a classic example of this transfer of capital kind of thing, because you never really know. And then in the summer, there may be changes again in terms of kids leaving the district or new people moving into the district. But that really struck me.
I'm sorry that it's not coming to me at the
Right,
top of my
I
head.
certainly understand.
But there was a reason, I
Yeah,
just can't remember.
but it hit me as a significant number. And I had one other item here. The internship program, in terms of the ENL internship program, I have a hard time justifying a position where somebody's going to be supervising internships. I don't know why that can't be part of a guidance counselor's function or responsibility, but to make an appropriation for this in terms of having a person charged with the kids out in the field working and stuff is, once again, I guess my ultimate goal is to be sustainable and truly sustainable. I know you're working towards it and we're working towards it, but I do think there are areas in the budget that we could still make cuts. Because I think one of the issues to me is just the interplay between the school and the city. I mean, people in the city learned last week that there's going to be, there was talk of a significant tax increase. So I think we have to be mindful of just how much the citizens can bear. And we have to do everything we can possibly do to alleviate whatever, non-emergency expenses we have to accommodate, senior citizens, people on fixed incomes, and just young people trying to make a living. So those are my concerns. I appreciate 3 options, but I still think we can do better than 2.98. Thank you.
Thank you for your feedback.
To Dr. Ryan's point on the culinary arts program.
Yeah, first.
Do you know offhand how many students go to BOCES for culinary arts and what that costs?
I think we currently have 4, and the cost is about $30,000 each.
So it would pay for itself in like a few years.
Yeah, and I just want to clarify, in the middle school, Family and Consumer Sciences is not an elective, so it may have decreased just because of scheduling and enrollment, but it's not necessarily reflective of a decrease in interest. In fact, the foods classes at the high school have been packed for the last few years. What we're really proposing to do is professionalize that program and provide students with a path to a career that is really a viable option, especially in our community where, we have so many options in terms of hospitality and food services. I think it's a really great, viable career for some students, and providing them the opportunity to get a state certification in it gives them a path to that career.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. DeVito, for putting together, your hard work in putting together such an articulate presentation for us. Going back to the culinary arts room, that seems to be the hot topic. Are we going to make sure that before we design, we get the input from the teachers that are going to be using it, so that we design the best to fit their program?
Yes, we've already begun getting input from the teacher, and we will continue to do so.
And we're going to design to be multi-use room for multi-levels of instruction?
Yeah, I mean, some of the ideas that we've had is by having it in the cafeteria, that there's so much you can do to try to bring the high school together around culinary programs, around, different like events, hospitality, food tasting and things to really make good use of that space and do more than just educate certain kids in culinary arts. We're looking at it to be more of a hub center for the school. Our high school administration was very excited about the idea. Our teacher over at the high school was excited about it as well. We had started talking about this several years ago, and we had to put these plans on the shelf at the time because of other more pressing needs. And it seemed like now, again, repurposing money that we already have, right? So it's not any impact to the taxpayer. This is money we have already that was already part of lines that was not fully spent in prior years. This is an opportunity to say, let's make good use of that money. Instead of having, the option is it would go back to fund balance. So that's what's going to happen. We had a conversation a couple weeks ago. I had originally put $855,000, which was the full balance that we have that's unspent. The board at that time had decided they wanted to hold redoing the Lindell Auditorium, right? So that's why this number changed from $855,000 to $600,000. So what's going to happen now to that $255,000 at the end of this fiscal year, that will go back to fund balance. Because we only have 2 options. We can either repurpose it or it goes to fund balance. So this was an idea to say, let's see if the board can approve repurposing it for this very valuable program that we all had wanted to do several years ago, but we had to put it on the shelf at this time. And that's why it's in the budget for next year.
Having many years of experience with that room, if we don't build a new facility, what is it going to cost us to maintain and repair the one we have there?
Right, so that's
classroom.
Yeah, I appreciate that question, Mr. Bogdan, because our existing culinary arts classroom at the high school is in need of upgrading, right?
Building.
Yeah. So we had an option. If we wanted to continue the program, we would either have to literally gut that classroom, but that classroom really isn't the best place to have that program, or take space that's pretty much unused space on the very east end of the cafeteria and create a new classroom. And one of the things at the high school, it's always an issue with space. They always feel very limited by space. So then that opens up that culinary arts classroom as another classroom that can be used for, the high school administration was very excited about different options to use that space. But you're right, the cost of upgrading that existing classroom, I think was about $350,000 to maybe $400,000. So for the additional $200,000, again, that we have already, that either has to be spent for capital or goes to fund balance, was an opportunity to have it be something that could rival a BOCES program, generate more interest, do something additional value for the school as a whole, and put kids on a different career path.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. DeVito. I appreciate all your hard work, as well as your staff, because I know this is a team effort.
Sure.
So I appreciate your thorough presentation. I just have a couple questions. The first floor windows at West School, that does not include the expenses for the replacement of that wall, right?
Correct. That's separate.
Okay, that's separate.
So may I just pause on that
Yes.
for a second, Mrs. Daggett? So the north side of West School, we've been having problems with water infiltration. That is something we've already had state approval on. We already have the funding for it. We're using leftover bond funding, so we did have some bond money, about $3 million that we didn't spend, because we came under budget for the bond project, the $100 million project, that we're allowed to repurpose because that scope was included in the original bond scope. You know, as if you have some money, you can stretch it to do that wall. We found out that we do. We have some money. It's a need. We're getting water infiltration there. We've already received state approval. We've already gone out to bid, and we've already planning to start that work this summer. Yeah.
The new vestibule at Nike, the security vestibule, could
Yeah.
you just touch on that for
Sure.
those people who are
Thank
in
you.
the audience who have not heard about this?
So,
in the
you know, we've spent a lot of time over the past several years trying to upgrade our safety and security measures throughout the district. Some of it has to do with infrastructure. For example, we built a new security vestibule at the high school. We started over the summer. We upgraded the security vestibule here at East with some different features. And as part of the bond project, when we had a chance to increase scope, we increased the scope several years ago. One of the things that we're trying to do is see what else we can do to strengthen our security measures across the district. One of the things that we thought we could do is do something at Nike. They do not have a security vestibule there, and there is a place where we have students and staff, and we thought that it was important to address that over there for something for next year.
And as far as the psychologist for Nike, at one of the meetings recently, Dr. Cantori was there and indicated that she felt it was a need. And so with her expertise in the field and knowing what she needs, I'm absolutely in favor of more mental health services throughout this district, but specifically in that location. So, thank you
for
very
your
much.
feedback. Thank you.
Sure.
I just wanted to add.
So one of the things that we talked about, Dr. Ryan, several years ago was doing something, and again, to find space in the high school, was making a new art room down there. Again, that was scrapped at the time, but our architect is involved, and he hasn't said anything that would seem that it would be a problem.
Okay, thank you. Okay, again, Mr. DeVito, thank you. Are there any student organization announcements? No? Okay, questions and comments from the public on tonight's agenda only?
Board of Education.
Jackie Moore, 73 Buffalo Avenue, Central Council, Co-President, Central Council State Department. I just need clarification because I'm sure I missed something that you said. On the page, the transfer to school lunch fund, could you just explain to me why the one number under the 15-16 actual expenses is 925,000, and then after that it's 350? I may have missed what you said.
No, I
Could you
didn't.
just
I didn't explain it, and it's a good question. So what happens is we transferred about 350,000 in to cover that gap over the past several years. If the gap is larger than that 350,000, the amount of the transfer, we have to carry a balance, okay? We carry a balance, and we have actually, it's a deficit, right? It becomes an ongoing deficit, and then we have to actually take money out of our fund balance as a hold for that running deficit. When we clear the deficit, okay, and we actually spend the money, we actually have to show as an expense. So this was a year in which we cleared the ongoing deficit, and that's why it's a multi-year deficit that's built into also that annual gap. We cleared it, the next year 350,000, and that still isn't enough, right? So we have a little bit of an ongoing deficit going, and probably next year, if we were to clear it, you would see an increase in the expense. So we didn't have to budget more, we just ended up taking some of like our fund balance or savings account to cover the difference. That's why for next year, we're saying, instead of transferring 350 and then having a deficit that then eventually we're gonna have to satisfy, let's budget appropriately.
Okay.
We were optimistic in the past, right? We thought we would 350, it's not enough. It's really 400. And our auditors had recommended just put the best number there, that's what you think it's gonna be, and that's what it is.
Very good.
Good question, though, thank you.
Well, not for nothing, our auditors also recommend that we make some other changes to bring down the deficit. That wasn't the only auditor's recommendation vis-à-vis the food service program.
Correct.
So we pick and choose which auditor's recommendations we want to follow.
Oh, not me.
I didn't mean for me. That was a rhetorical question.
Good evening, Joanne Maria. Mr. DeVito, I appreciate your report. It was very informative. But I do have a question, and maybe with all the numbers you were throwing out, you might have, you mentioned before with the transportation building,
Yeah.
you said 4 million we'll need in 4 years. But it was a couple of presentations ago, you said that the new building would be started in 2020. That's 2 years from now. Has the time frame changed?
I have to go back to that presentation to see when it is. I think it's maybe about 3 or 4 years out, but I don't have that number in my head. It's on the web and capital projects. I thought it was.
I have it in the pamphlet.
Okay, I thought it was a little bit further out, but whenever it was that we said, you know, we need to get ready to replace that building. Is it, I don't know, I think it's more than 2 years, may not be 4. It may have been 4 when we mentioned it back a year and a half ago in December. I'd have to check the dates, I don't know.
I'm talking about maybe 2 or 3 presentations ago.
Yeah, I'm sorry. I would,
2020?
yeah, I'd have to look back at
All
that.
right, thank you.
Yeah, I can send you an email tomorrow and clarify
I
that.
appreciate that.
Yeah.
My name is Dr. Pamela Banks. I'm in Long Beach. So I just want to say that thank you very much for the wonderful presentation. I was on the school board in Merrick, so I'm very interested to do things very differently, but I have to say, much better. So, but I didn't say that. I've got a question for you though. Are we within the tax code?
Excellent question. So our maximum tax allowable is actually a 4.10.
Okay.
So I gave the board 3 versions, right, where we were on March 22nd, and then 2 others for them to consider tonight. So whether it was where we were a couple weeks ago, where it was, I think, a 3.47, or where it seems as though some of the board members feel they'd like to be below 3, it's way below the tax cap.
Perfect.
Yep.
Okay. And then I just have 2 comments. New York State now mandates that we have mental health curriculum, we increase it, and I'm very supportive of increased psychologists in the Nike program. It's very, very important. I also want to congratulate you for having an alternative program. We have one also in Belmar, and it's wonderful. We have a 0 dropout rate because of it. So I think it's very wonderful that you will support those students. And you also have a culinary art program in the high school, and it also been very, very successful. So please just keep that in mind. Thank you.
very much.
Anyone else? No? Okay. Treasurer's report for February 2018, and approval of minutes for executive session, regular meetings, March 1st, 5th, 8th, 15th, 19th, 22nd.
Motion.
Second.
Okay, any discussion? No? Mrs. Tagli?
I vote yes.
Ms. Verona?
Yes.
Dr. Ryan?
Yes.
Mr. Bowden?
Yes.
And I vote yes. Okay, presentations of the superintendent.
I'd like to take item 1, certificate of personnel.
Motion. Second.
Any discussion? Okay, I'll call for a vote. Mrs. Tagli?
Yes.
Mrs. Verona?
Yes.
Dr. Ryan?
Yes.
Mr. Bowden?
Yes.
And I vote yes.
I'd like to take item 2, non-certificated personnel.
Motion.
Motion,
Second.
second. Any discussion? No? I'll call for a vote. Mrs. Tagli?
Yes.
Mrs. Verona?
Yes.
Dr. Ryan?
Yes.
Mr. Bowden?
Yes.
And I vote yes.
Item 3, adoption of budget. I believe we have to decide on a version.
Is that, so
Yeah. we
is
need a
this going to
motion
be
for this.
deciding on the
Both. We need
Both.
the budget and the
And the
tax
version.
levy.
Okay.
I make a motion to approve version 3.
Second it.
Second? Any discussion? Okay, I just have one question. Mr. DeVito, if this version 3 is approved, and like Mrs. Verona said, before the election or whatever, if there's a way of reducing it even further,
The budget and the tax levy, which
the tax levy,
we would have to have a new meeting, and you'd have to make a resolution, because what happens is that tomorrow we have to file our property tax report card. It has to be filed within 24
I
hours.
got it. So, I just want to thank you for all the hard work you did on this budget. And I know that in the course of prior months, all the board members individually, including myself, I wouldn't say pestered, but called with their suggestions. And as early as, I think it was last Friday, when I met with you, when we came down to 2.98. So I thank you for that. And I'll call for a vote. Mrs. Stagner.
Yes. Wait, what are we voting on? On the 2.98, that was the
Yeah.
motion. On 2.98, okay.
Mrs.
I
Verona?
vote yes.
Dr.
I vote
Bryant?
yes.
Did
Okay.
anybody second the,
Your parent did it?
Yes.
I vote no.
Mr. Bodnar?
Yes.
And I vote yes. Actually, I should have made a comment prior, but I appreciate Dr. Ryan's concerns. But what we've done here is maintain a budget that does not cut program and actually increases the program and staying under the state cap. We're putting this district on a great road, and sometimes it costs a couple of dollars to do that. Speaking as a retired person, I understand the retirees' concern about taxes going up, but I pay them also. And it's a situation where you have to pay for progress. I will not sit in this seat and see Long Beach School District slip back to the Middle Ages. Okay?
I'd just like to make a comment too in terms of my recommendations. None of them was a cut-in program. I don't think any of them would represent a return to the Middle Ages. I think we're a vibrant and a strong school district. We have many concerned parents and great kids, as evidenced here tonight by the presentation, but none of my suggestions represented a cut-in program. Most of the recommendations are the establishment of program, and I'm not in any way hoping to compromise the integrity or the excellence of this district by my comments.
Okay. Do you?
I'd like to take items 4 through 7 together. Yeah, sorry, 4 as amended.
No, we haven't done 3 yet.
We did 3.
We adopted version 3.
I thought 3 and 4 were together.
This is, but we have to make sure that we have 3 and 4 separately, please.
Oh,
Yeah,
okay.
we did 3.
Okay, we did 3, let's do 4.
Okay,
But we didn't do 3 as written.
No, we did it as amended.
As amended.
as amended.
So Perry says, I make a motion
As amended.
As
that
amended.
we
Adopt version 3.
adopt version 3.
As amended.
No, adopt version
No.
3 was what,
Oh, right.
so that means that the budget amount is 139,922?
Correct.
Okay. Version 3 means many things besides
It does.
139,922.
Yep.
Okay.
Thanks for the clarification.
Okay, I'd like to take item 4.
Motion.
Second.
Any discussion?
Well, again, we need to
As
change the
amended.
figures
Yes.
here.
As amended.
So the figures would be, the amendment is
that we're changing the amount to what?
139.
922,949.
And the tax levy will be?
2.98.
No, you need the amount.
Oh, I don't have the sheet. What is that amount?
Well, how come you want? 102,234,891.
Michael's done.
The U,
That's correct, 102,034,891, which is a 2.98% increase
Okay,
from the current year.
okay. I'll call for a vote as number 4 as amended. Mrs. Taggy?
Yes.
Mrs. Verona?
Yes.
Dr. Ryan? No. Mr. Bodnar?
yes.
And I vote yes.
Items 5 through 7 together, please.
Motion?
Second.
Okay, any discussion? Okay, I'll call for a vote. Mrs. Taggy?
Yes.
Mrs. Verona?
Yes.
Dr. Ryan?
Yes.
Mr. Bodnar?
Yes.
And I vote yes. Okay. Board of Education, additional new or old business, if any?
I first was not here at the last meeting, so I want to congratulate Dr. Gallagher on the appointment and wish her every good luck in the position. I also want to reiterate what I said last October, at which time the consultants were hired for the search. At that time, I mentioned that I thought it was an abrogation of the responsibility of the Board of Education. And I guess 6 months later and $27,000 later, I want to just reiterate that I don't think that expenditure was necessary. I congratulate Dr. Gallagher. I'm looking forward to working with her. The whole process was just profound from the first day in terms of process and in terms of the end where stakeholders were not asked to interview finalists. But be that as it may, I have every confidence that Dr. Gallagher will be successful. I'll do everything I can to work with her. So congratulations.
Thank you.
Anyone else?
I would just like to congratulate the National Honor Society inductees. They attended a wonderful ceremony on Tuesday night, and also congratulate the students on the presentation of Greece. We haven't had a chance to meet since the show. It was a wonderful show at the high school. Thank you.
So I have a couple of things. At the last meeting, we had talked about Mr. DeVito in an earlier presentation on transportation policies. I had recommended that we eliminate religion, taking kids to religion as an acceptable stop. And I brought up at the last meeting, we decided to wait till we had a full board. So I guess I have to make a motion before we talk about it. Is that how it goes?
As long as you say religious instruction.
What did I say?
Religion.
Okay, well, I'm going to make a motion that we eliminate religious instruction as a permissible stop for transportation in the Long Beach School District. Anybody want to second that? Okay.
Anybody second? No?
Nobody seconded it?
No, student,
I thought you did, Mr. Nunes.
No, I didn't second.
Yes, for a second.
Okay, so nobody's seconding that? Okay, good to know.
Wait, would you just repeat your resolution?
Could you repeat that, Carol?
okay. Mrs. Rona made a motion to eliminate religious instruction as a stop. Permissible stop.
As a trip.
Transportation.
Okay, it's okay. Nobody else wants to do it, that's all. I got it, okay. Moving on.
Can I just offer something? I don't know if the board, and Ms. Frazier, maybe you can chime in here. I don't know if the board actually has to make a motion. I mean, we can discuss it publicly, but it's really policy, and it should take place in a policy committee. So I just want to make sure that none of the board members are speaking up because it's a different process. So, and that may be why they're not seconding a resolution, but I think if you want to talk about it as new rule of business, that's something we can certainly talk about and should talk about it, and then we can take it up at the policy committee.
Well, it's pretty clear that a majority of the board has no interest in it.
But maybe they just don't want to do it in the form of a resolution, that's all.
Well, okay, well, first you need a motion to talk about it, or I'm just bringing it up as old new business.
Yeah, right.
All right, I already brought it up. If anybody else wants to talk about it, take your time.
Yeah.
Okay, my bigger issue tonight.
I'd like to talk about it.
Excuse me?
Well, do you want to talk about it, or do we go to a bigger issue?
No, let's go to my if you want to bring it up as old new business, feel free. I'm done. My bigger issue tonight is the school calendar. I would like the board to direct the superintendent. I know we approved the school calendar a month or more ago, but I want, my recommendation, my request is that the board direct the superintendent to reopen that school calendar and that we change the way we do snow days. It clearly didn't work this year to have the last day of a vacation be a snow day. So I guess my thought was that we add days into the calendar and we have them as school days. So for instance, the Thursday and Friday of Memorial Day, before the Memorial Day weekend, would be listed as school days. And then, if we don't need them as snow days, then we get a vacation. So we get this unanticipated 4-day weekend that we didn't expect if we don't need them. Seems to me it's a whole shift in how we look at days of instruction. You know, anybody who thinks that last Friday was the day of instruction, it was vis-a-vis the state, and we got our state aid and whatever money we got, but there wasn't a whole heck of a lot of instruction going on, and there wasn't a whole heck of a lot of kids here who could have received instruction.
So if I might take your big issue and just add on to it to make it maybe even
Well,
bigger.
you might want to wait till I'm done, but...
Well, that's the issue that's pending with the Board of Regents concerning the whole issue of whether we should tabulate the instruction by days or by hours. And we had asked Dr. Gallagher a while back, and she did a great job in terms of where we were relative to other districts, in terms of the number of hours our children sat in instruction, because of the issue you raised, because of emergency days and snow days and all the rest, the state now has passed very serious discussion concerning, and it's going out to communities now for public discussion, in terms of, rather than looking at it in terms of 180 days, but looking at it in terms of, I don't know what it was, 990 hours, or whatever, a year, a school year in terms of instruction. So that, I think, might feed into your argument, Mrs. Verner, in terms of an alternative way of looking at it, so we don't, what happened this year won't happen again.
So, Dr. Ryan, actually, the Board of Regents adopted that policy this week. They have not yet issued a guidance document on that because there are some nuances about what we can count and not count. My understanding is we are far above that 900 and 990 hour requirement, but we may have to look at how we account for hours. If it's the will of the board, I would suggest that you direct me to open the calendar. I can negotiate with our 3 units about some potential options that satisfy those requests and maximize instruction. And I can bring that back to the board.
Great.
That certainly would be my will. What's everybody else think?
I think it's great.
I do too, I think that's what the...
Anybody else?
You want to go back and talk about religion? You want to go back and talk about religion?
Yeah, I'm twitching. Okay, I'm wondering if we have a timeline on the repair of the middle school auditorium in the middle school, the roof.
When we know that there was asbestos-containing material in the ceiling. Unfortunately, we've been fighting with our insurance company because their adjuster states that this pipe can be fixed without having to fix the ceiling. So I've asked our director of facilities to work with our architect to get a letter so that we can submit that to the insurance company saying that he will not certify the work unless we repair the ceiling. Now, we've asked their engineer to certify that it's safe to repair the pipe without replacing the ceiling, and their engineer is unwilling to do so. So I said the only thing that we can do is if our architect is not going to sign off on the safe repair of that pipe, he needs to stay so. He doesn't need to opine on the work that's actually done. He needs to say conceptually, when we know there's asbestos-related material and we don't replace the ceiling, he will not sign off on that. And then hopefully there'll be some movement because insurance should cover it. Insurance should cover the repair of the pipe and the replacement of the ceiling. One of the reasons why we're taking this position, as you know, here we are in East School, where we had issues with the ceiling coming down. And we feel that we need to make sure that that ceiling is safe for staff and students and parents that are in that room. And we want to do it right, and we feel the insurance company should cover it. So when I find out more about getting through that bottleneck that we're in right now, then we'll have a timeline, but I can't give you one at this point.
Thank you.
May I just ask a question? Just two things. I just wanted to commend Ms. Conley and Mr. Watson, the changes in this facility here, in this cafeteria. Very, very, very nice in terms of that. And I'm glad we cleared up Perseverance. It's a really nice cafeteria. I like it very much. But I also wanted to get an update, if I could, on the whole PE recess issue. Could I get an update on that? Because the last we talked about it, there was going to be a solicitation of parent opinion.
Yeah, and we are still going to do that. I held off on that a little bit because part of the implications of that intersect with the calendar issue and whether or not we can count that as instruction, which again, we're waiting for some guidance on the state on. However, in the meantime, just because in principle, I think that we all agree that our students need more opportunities for physical movement and play, I have spoken with the elementary principals and we're working on a proposal to give students some additional options for physical activity during the day that would supplement what we already have. Whether we make a major change to that program right now or not, it would at least give us some opportunity for more play, more physical interaction and instruction in the afternoon. So more to come on that. Within the next month or so, I should have more guidance from the state and we'll get the family survey out.
And that would happen without lengthening or increasing the length of the school day.
Well, that's part of the problem. We can't do that right now. So we may have to look at some intermediate options and then look for a long-range plan.
Thank you. And when do you expect to bring closure to this?
A month ago, but I hope by the end of May.
Thank you.
Okay.
Are we all
Mrs. Beck.
done? I just wanted to say something very quickly. 9 years ago, I'm wearing my red East School jacket today, because 9 years ago, when I decided to run on the board, for the board, there was a threat of East School closing, so many of you I met, and we soon became good friends. And so I fought very hard to get on the board at that time, and I was very successful, and we kept East School open, and I'm very proud of that. But tonight, I will tell you that I am not running for re-election. I will be supporting your budgets, your programs, and your schools. I am a taxpayer here. I love Long Beach, and I do a lot of volunteering, and PTA has been my life for so many years. That school board was just a natural thing for me to get involved in. But I really believe that my journey on the school board has been wonderful, even with some disagreements and problems along the way. But we always had the students in mind and the district in mind as a whole. And I believe that moving forward, I will be supporting candidates who have that same vision that I have and had. And I look forward to supporting those candidates. And I look forward to staying involved. So thank you for my journey. It's been wonderful. And East School rocks.
As for myself, it's been my pleasure serving with you for 6 years.
So I'd like to just thank Mrs. Tagman for her years of service to the students and staff of the district. As a staff member, she was always supportive of us, so thank you.
Thank you.
She's not leaving yet.
Well, no, but, okay. Questions and comments from the public?
My name is Virginia Daly, and I'm from 413 Washington Boulevard in Long Beach. And yes, I would like to talk about religious freedom. Funny you should say that. But I'm from a group, we call ourselves Americans for Freedom of Religion or Catholics for Freedom of Religion. And we are a group that go in and we teach children that attend public school what their rights are, what they're allowed to say, what they're allowed to do. So we've gone and we've taught really thousands and thousands of students. We do this through the CCD programs. We also go and we educate parents. We go to Knights of Columbus. We have been on EWTN and TeleCare with our program. And before I start, I would just like to say that there are no problems. I don't have any complaints about religious freedom, but I just want to tell you kind of like what we do with our students. So that's really why I'm here tonight, because there are so many issues across the country that you hear about students being denied their religious freedom rights. So I just wanted to kind of make a statement to the board. I have some information I made. I understand there's 5 members of the board. I would like to pass out some folders to you. And I just wanted to tell you about this. So I have prepared the handouts, and in them is this little pamphlet. It's called Free to Speak. And in here, there are guidelines that are from Bill Clinton when he was the president. I have also included in the packet for you the letter that Bill Clinton wrote when he was the president in 1995. And he realized that there was an issue with religious freedom in the public schools. So he wrote these guidelines. The first one is that children in public schools can pray and read their Bible or other religious material and talk about their faith in school. They can organize prayer groups and religious clubs, and they can announce their meetings. They can express their faith in their classwork and homework. The teachers can organize prayer groups with other teachers. They can go off campus to have religious studies during school hours. They can express their faith at school events, and they can express their faith at graduation. So that is also included in that. I also have a copy of the Constitutional Rights of Students, Teachers, and Public Schools regarding seasonal religious expression from Alliance Defending Freedom, and a letter to the school superintendent about students' rights at Christmas that is also from Alliance Defending Freedom. That I assume that you got that. Did you get that around Christmas? No? But I have a copy in here. I thank you for this time, and like I said, I have no issues. I have not heard anything. So before I start, I had to say that. Thank you.
Thank you.
Is this on? Oh, okay.
Alexis Pace, 660 East Olive Street. Ms. Tagney, so nice to see you here, and I'm sorry to see you leaving as a proud East School mommy at heart. So thank you so much for all that you've done and all that you continue to do. A couple things I wanted to mention. Ms. Verona, you mentioned the school day that we had over the vacation, and I'm glad you brought it up. There were some issues on that day, and I don't know if you were privy to the information. As you all know, Kai goes to Lido. We were not here, we were on vacation, but I was surprised to find out that her bus never showed up. And what I had come to learn in talking to other parents in the district is that on that day, apparently that bus company either was not open or was not notified, and the special ed buses never, I guess, went around and picked up the students. And I guess it took a little time for this to come out, and teachers were waiting for their students to arrive. I know that it was resolved, according to some of the parents that I spoke to, but it is something to think about as far as that lines of communication. I don't even understand how anything like this could ever happen. So I wanted to make you all aware of that, and I don't know if you have any comments, but if I could just keep speaking. The second thing I wanted to bring up is as you know, I talk to a lot of people in this district. A lot of people come to me and tell me things. And I was made aware by some of the TAs that were in Lido School during the New York State testing that occurred this week, that there were also some issues that you may or may not be aware of that I found quite alarming. What I was told is that the instructions that were given regarding the modifications for kids that have IEPs was that the test could not be read, that there were a couple TAs that were proctoring. The information that was given is that the test could not be read for the ELA portion, not for the math. That, in fact, is not true, and you can look it up on the guidelines, on the New York State guidelines on the computer, and I did that just to make sure when I came to you that that was accurate information. Unfortunately, there was a large period of time in between the students starting the test and not having it read to then figuring out that it was done wrong, and upwards of maybe half hour to 45 minutes was the information I was told, and then they had to restart the test. So a couple things are alarming to me. Why that would even happen confuses me as a parent. The validity of the test, I would question how that could even be now submitted to New York State if the students started it and then 45 minutes later had to restart it with correct modifications. And in this district, when we have curriculum directors and we have special educators and we have special ed CPSE chairs and everyone else, why they weren't placed in the middle school and why this was not worked out well before the test was administered. My last comment is just regarding Perfect Pals, which you all know I've brought up before, near and dear to my heart. As far as I know from my son, Lucas, who is a Perfect Pal, and Kaya, obviously at Lido, that program has not really been reinstated as it was promised to start again. And it saddens me on so many levels, so more so for the kids, again, that are providing that service than the kids that actually receive that service. So I did make a phone call to Mrs. Weiss today, I will say that. She did call me back. She wasn't really sure who was in charge of the program, which also confused me. Because again, as an acting principal of a school, and you have a program that exists in your school, I find it, once again, very disheartening that everybody passes the buck. And overall, just to echo what Mr. Manitsky said, we want to move this district forward, right? And we want to make this district the best that it can be, and we're going to add all this money and all these great things. We have an existing special ed program that is failing. And I think that there needs to be a little bit more eyes on that program. And these things, like buses not showing up and testing modifications, are big things. So I'd like to see those looked at and resolved. And that's it.
So, can I just?
Of course, answers.
Yes. 1, 2, 3. Perfect Pals. We did speak about, I'm sorry. We did speak about that. I will follow up with Mrs. Weiss about that tomorrow. There are people in charge of that program. I know exactly who those people are, and we will work on that. I did not follow up on that since our last conversation because my understanding was it was being restarted. This is my first hearing that that did not happen. I also had not heard about the difficulty with test accommodations nor with the bus transportation. And I have checked with each of the buildings about testing over the past 2 days to see if anything had gone wrong. So again, please know that will be followed up on. The buck doesn't get passed from this seat, but I need to hear about these things, and then I will follow up on them immediately and let you know. And I agree with you, unconscionable.
I just wanted to say that normally I would have not done it here. I literally just found out about all of this over the last 24 hours, and being that there was a board meeting, I didn't have time to email you all today because I know you all love my emails, so I figured I would just come in person.
I do enjoy your emails, and I do.
Just one more thing, Mrs. Bates. I do take exception to the statement that our special ed program is failing. I do think that, like any other program, there are things we can improve in. But I think we have much to be proud of about our special education program. And the things that we need to improve, we will improve.
Okay, your comments, 3 comments, what's disturbing is that it happened, or supposedly it happened, and that no one was notified. No one on the board knew about it. Apparently, the superintendent didn't know about it. So we have to find out what went on.
But again, if you can encourage people, and I don't know what their feeling was in the past, pick up the phone, call people who can actually do something about it. You know, we try very hard, our whole team of administrators, to be responsive, you know, but we need to hear it. So if you can just go back to the people who told you and say, next time, instead of calling you, call me, or call someone who can really react to it. If they don't get action, then definitely, you know, this is the appropriate forum, but, you know, give us an opportunity to fix the problems.
Okay, anyone else? No? Okay. Long Beach Classroom Teachers Association.
Start off by saying congratulations to the students who are here this evening. It was certainly impressive to see their creative solutions to their everyday problems. A number of people leaving this evening, so I'd say good luck to them. Congratulations to the board, and thank you very much for adopting the budget, which maintains and increases the high-quality education for the students of Long Beach. Certainly nice to hear Mr. DeVito use the S word tonight, without the word "not" in front of it. And Darlene, congratulations.
Thank you.
Good luck. Yeah, thank you. For the past 6 years, I know all of you done 9. I thought I heard you say 6 tonight. But you know, your work goes way beyond those 9 years. I'm sure it'll continue. So good luck and congratulations.
Okay. Monty? Okay. Group C.
First of all, on behalf of my membership, Dr. Gallagher, we would like to say thank you and congratulations. I would have personally been here, but I was on a union convention, and I'm sorry that I missed that. So I'd like to congratulate you, and we really do look forward to working with you, so thank you. Mrs. Tagney, we're going to miss you. You are a true advocate of the children and my group, and we so very much appreciate all your efforts over the years. I wish you only the best. I hope to see you sitting in a sunny beach chair, enjoying yourself, whatever you choose to do. But please don't leave the children behind. Please stay active. Thank you. Thank you very much.
PTA.
Last but certainly not least, the children this evening were fantastic. That was one of the best student presentations that we've seen in a long time, in my opinion. But it was great. Thank you, Mr. DeVito, for your presentation, and thank you to the board for passing the budget. No, for approving the budget. That's what I was going to say. And what I really came out here to say, well, was to talk to Mrs. Taggett. Where do I even begin? Because I think we can actually say that it was me and Jerry and a group, not a great big group, but there was a group of parents that we were, I don't want to say wrong, we were desperate. We were absolutely desperate. Because we were told that our school was going to close. And that was not acceptable to us at that time. It's not acceptable to us at this time. So I'm glad that that's not even in the discussion right now. No, it was the second time, but. So I have to just say thank you so much for that time, that yourself and Mrs. Guma, that you came together and we did something that we didn't really know if it would work, and it did, and we're very, very appreciative that it did. And so we, PTA, but myself, Jerry's going to be very, very upset that she's not going to do this. but to thank you personally and from PTA, from the school, how much we appreciate what you did, and that you stuck with it for a long time. You know, that's an incredible amount of time. So I wish you the best of luck with whatever you're going to go and do. And thank you. Thank you.
Okay, I'll accept the motion to adjourn.
Motion.
Okay. Meeting's adjourned.